if you hear somebody saying, "Shut up, Roger." Now, we have next, MEG PHILP.
Good evening. I've got a little bit of a story to tell. A history, if you like, perhaps some of the history of Roger Holmes that you don't know. I've been doing a bit of research and I thought I'd fill you in on a few things. For example, you know, look at him now, but when he was a young man, he was wild. He got up to all sorts of shenanigans. In his 20s and 30s, it was all there. He had mates, of course. They weren't quite sure what to make of him, you know. He was here one minute, gone the next. He was flat out all the time, liked to drink. And you know how mates are. This Roger. He said, Roger Holmes, what sort of name is that? One of them says, well, he's never around. We could call him Never Holmes. And the other one said, and he likes to be flat out and he's a bit of a drinker. Lizard Holmes. No, they said. And then the other one says, he's quick, he's flashy, and he's sharp with it. Razor. So I need you to know he used to be called Razor Holmes. And this is what happened to him in his younger days. And this is how he is the man he is today. Now, Razor was into everything. You know, he had a finger, he's good with numbers. And he had a hand in various things that were a bit dubious when he was a teenager, and that sort of escalated. He was a bookies runner, and then it went on to all sorts of other nefarious traits. I have to say that, you know, he just seemed to be in the right place at the right time. And he used to hang about, you know, near the dogs or near the racetrack. He was handy. People knew if you wanted to know a tip, speak to Razor Holmes. And on one particular evening, he really came good. He was out the back of the brickie with his mates, and he decided just to stick to the tails. He followed the tails all the way through and Tomo's 2 up, and believe it or not, he won 500 quid. Well, that was it. You know, he'd had a bit of a razzmatazz of a life. He'd been around, but he decided now that he had a bit of money coming, he should, you know, live like the rich and famous. He decided that he would join Tattersall's Club in the city. Now, you have to know that, you know, there's a certain kind of person that goes to Tattersall's Club, and Roger had some ideas of what that might look like. So he got all dressed up in his polo neck sweater and his new trousers and his suede boots. And he went down, got into town, went into Queen Street, went up to the counter in front of Tattersall's and spoke to the flunky and said, I wish to join this club. The flunky looked him up and down. He rummaged and pulled out a piece of paper and said, you have to fill in an application form. So, Razor took it next door to the nearest pub, filled it in, brought it back. Can I join? The committee meets on Friday, we'll let you know. Well, it turned out there was a bit of something going on in the city that night, so Razor went on and had a good old time. And he got a letter from the committee. You can imagine. His reputation had gone before him. When the committee saw who was applying to be a member of Tattersall's Club, the secretary, a hard man, said, we're not having him here. He's well known as a roustabout and all sorts of trouble. Dick, you can't trust him with money, I'll tell you. Well, the committee were quick to agree because, of course, they were kind of like that themselves, and another one would just be competition. So, the secretary says, look, we can get rid of him. We can just tell him He has hardly a bean to rub together. Can clink 2 pennies if he tried. Just tell him the membership is £250. So the flunky, when Roger came to ask, said, committee says membership £250. Roger was gone in an instant and back again. Slapped, bundle of tenors on the counter. There, he said. Am I in? I'll speak to the committee. The flunky went into the bar, where some of the committee were, of course, and showed them the wad of tens. Oh, dear God, said the treasurer. 250 right enough. We'll have to let him in. No. They were against it. There was a rumble in the bar. Oh, no. The secretary said, look, we'll just have to think of something else. Look, tell him that we need 3 sponsors. They've got to be famous and not Australian. This fella's been no further than Dunfermline. He wouldn't know. Well, he doesn't know anybody. Look, that'll get rid of him. He's a bluffer. He's a bludger. No, we don't want him. Well, the flunky went back out because Roger was waiting. And when he told Roger said, oh, you should have said earlier. 3 famous, not Australians, that would be my sponsors. Lyndon B. Johnson, Brezhnev, and the Pope. Really? Yes. Flunky went in and reported this. The committee were astounded. Oh, come on, he's bluffing this wide. We're not taking that on. We'll call his bluff. Could be the joke of the century. Let's say to him, is that so? We'd like to meet and talk to these sponsors then. Let's get organised. We'll go on a trip. We'll take him to Washington and Moscow and Rome, and we'll see what we can see. That'll do him, said the secretary. That's it over and done with now. Well, the letter arrived at Razor's place, and when he read it, suits me, he says. I've got a passport. Airmail letters would have been quicker, but who's going to knock back a trip? So when he sent his reply back to the committee were shocked. They shook. He's coming? We'll have to have a whip round. We've got his 250, but come on, you've each got to give me 250. So they had a whip round. So desperate were they to get rid of him. And soon they had enough for 2 airfares. And it wasn't long before Razor and the secretary were flying on their way to Washington. Gets to Washington, heads to the White House. They rumble around in the corridors for about 3 days, and eventually an aide comes forward and asks them what they want. An appointment with Lyndon B. Johnson. The aide shakes his head. No, we can't have that. You need to have an appointment. Who are you? And the secretary says, I'm the secretary from the Terraces Club in Brisbane. Brisbane? Where's that? Australia, says the secretary. Said the aide. Brisbane, the place where we sell all our old movies to the TV stations. Oh, now I know. But, Razor was getting a bit impatient. He said, look, just tell Lyndon Razor Holmes is here and wants to see him. And to remember, I was the one that was driving the getaway car when he had to get away fast from that breakdown in the talks at the Paris meeting. Well, the secretary heard this. The aide heard this and went off. Next thing he comes back and says, President Johnson, we'll see you now. Come on, please, Mr. Holmes. Well, the secretary said, I'm coming. No, said the aide. He wants a private chat with Mr. Holmes. So off he went. Well, he was gone for 4 or 5 hours. The secretary sat in a comfy chair in the corner, and eventually Razor sauntered out looking kind of cheery. Oh, I said, sorry, didn't mean to keep you waiting. It was, you know, a few drinks, chat with old friends. Oh, good time. The secretary was not amused. Oh, God. Next morning, they flew to Moscow. Now, it was freezing when they arrived, 20 below. They managed to get an interpreter. They walked across Red Square, gets to the Kremlin. The interpreter talks to the man at the gate about the Terraces Club in Brisbane. And eventually, Razor loses patience and said, look, just go in and tell Leonard that Razor Holmes from Brisbane is here and wants to see him. Just remember that I was the one that had the tugboat with a case of rum that managed to help along with that terrible time that you were having on the island there with the Chinese. If I'd have brought that rum, who knows what might have happened in the world. The secretary hears this. Off goes the attendant, and the same thing happens. He gets an audience with Brezhnev. Outside, she's jumping up and down, trying to keep warm, and eventually, out comes Razor. Good night, he says. Comrade Brezhnev, good night. We had good times. He remembered some of our national poetry. We had a good time together. We've sung a lot of songs, and he knows, Lord, he knows, I've sold a lot of Russian magazines down by the rocks. So, next stop, Rome. When they get to Rome, freshen up, they head to the Vatican. The secretary's beside himself. I have to get beside him. If he meets the Pope, the committee will never forgive me if I can't prove that he's bogus. When they get in there and get an appointment, after a while, they meet a cardinal. And the cardinal, non possible, no. They had to make another form filling in and all sorts of things. Well, that was when Razor lost it. He really lost it. He shouted, look, just go and tell the Pope that Razor Holmes is here from Brisbane and he wants to see him. And just remember, I was the one that traced the missing funds from the cathedral that was never built in Brisbane. Well, off he went and came back, smiles the cardinal. The Pope, His Eminence, will grant you an audience. Please come with me, Mr. Holmes. Oh, the secretary said, me too, I have to come with them. But the cardinal says, no, it's a private audience. But I must see him with the Pope. He wanted evidence. And the cardinal says, well, look, you know, at 1 o'clock, the Pope will have his audience on the balcony. I will arrange for Mr. Holmes to be standing with him. Well, what could he do? He just had to go off and had a cup of tea and a sandwich in a cafe that cost him an awful lot of money. And then at 1 o'clock he came back to St. Peter's Square and it was mobbed. It was before 1 o'clock, it was packed. At least 50,000. Oh my God, he could hardly see where he was going. He squeezed in and there was lots of chairs up the front, he couldn't get a chair. Eventually he managed to find a spot where he could sort of see up, but it was really hard, he could hardly see the balcony up there. And as he turned around he saw a man with a kilt standing beside him with a pair of binoculars. Oh, said the secretary. Quick, can I borrow your binoculars? The Scotsman says, bugger off. I've paid thousands to get here. 10 years I've wanted to get to the Vatican. I'm keeping my eye on here. There's things I want to see. Tell me what you see, will ya? And just then the cheer rose up from the crowd, all as one. And there was movement. What's happening? The Scotsman looks and says, oh, yep, a couplet, there's movement on the balcony. There's a big tall fella there I'm not really familiar with. But wait, there's another, oh look, that's definitely raise our home from Brisbane. The greatest larkin in Australia. It's adapted from, of course, The Yarns of Billy Borker by Frank Hart.
Very good there. Meg Philp. Don't believe a word of it.
That story years ago.
I've known Roger nearly all my life and he's not like that at all.